Breaking political news out of Texas now, where Governor Rick Perry has been indicted for abuse of power and coercion of a public servant. The indictment lists 2 felony counts for vetoing millions of dollars in funding for state public corruption prosecutors. Last year, Perry threatened to veto the funding if the district attorney of Travis County, it's the county around Austin, didn't resign. That DA had been convicted for driving while intoxicated, and it's her office that runs the state's integrity unit. Jim Moore has been reporting and consulting on Texas politics since the 1970s. His new book is called Adios Mofo, Why Rick Perry Will Make America Miss George W. Bush. So, Jim, thank you for joining us. And if you could just quickly explain the basics of this. You have a prosecutor whose office is funded by the state, and the prosecutor gets a DUI, is drunk, and will not resign. And so Rick Perry zeroes out the funding for her office. Where's the crime here?
Well, number one, under Texas law, it's an abuse of office and a form of coercion to take money away that the legislature has appropriated in order to get someone to do something. So that's his main problem. But the political rationale behind this for Perry was the fact that her office maintains something called the Public Integrity Unit, and it investigates the legislature. It has the only authority in the state of Texas to investigate ethics and potential crimes in the legislature, and it has historically been run by a Democrat, as Miss Limburg was. So, and still is. And so the governor wanted her out of the way. He would have gotten to a point of replacement. It would have obviously have been a Republican. And so he decided to use his office in a way that he could coerce her to get out.
Well, I'm just, and I understand, I want to get to the legal, the strictly legal part of this in a second, but from a, from a sort of public relations standpoint, a court of public opinion on this, I'm hearing here a defense here that might resonate with a lot of voters down in Texas, where you have the woman who is in charge of the Public Integrity Unit for the state of Texas gets a DUI, and I've seen the details on this case. I mean, is recklessly drunk. It's a matter of public record, and will not resign her office. And Rick Perry could say, hey, I was just doing what I could to get her out of that office. I imagine court of public opinion, he might have some sympathy there.
Well, fair enough, Steve, but the further part of this case is that the penalty she suffered was very drastic for a first-time offender. 45 days in jail, which she served. And the other piece of this that tends to resonate with the public is the fact that Perry is trying to circumvent being investigated by anyone and putting a Republican in charge who's unlikely to investigate him. And let's be clear, I mean, it's not the first time a public official in Texas has been arrested for driving while intoxicated. And we've got a long record in this state of forgiving people and electing them to office. And she went into rehab, and she's announced that she's not going to run for re-election. So it seemed on Perry's part a kind of power play. But to your point also, it has not really affected him politically in this state, because it's been a case that mostly has been followed by political insiders.
Yeah, no, I think this caught a lot of people by surprise tonight, myself included. Perry's office put out this statement just moments ago. The veto in question was made in accordance with the veto authority afforded to every governor under the Texas Constitution. We will continue to aggressively defend the governor's lawful and constitutional action and believe we will ultimately prevail. So, Jim, he's saying he does have the right to veto that funding. He's asserting there. But can you speak to the charges against him here? If he were to be found guilty of this, what would that mean?
Well, it means it's not good. The abuse of office part is a felony that carries 5 to 99 years. The coercion part is 2 to 10 years if he is found guilty. But the part of this that hasn't surfaced, and I think is the strongest part of the case, and I've heard this around the courthouse and in political circles in Texas, that there is some indication that the governor, after she refused, tried to cut a deal with her and to get her another job, and to suggest that perhaps if she would step aside and allow him to have control of that office and that budget, that he would find another place. And that becomes a kind of inducement that makes it look like it's more than simply an act of vetoing the funding, but it's a coercion and it's a bribe to get her out of office. And it's not just an act of a governor doing his job and exercising a line item veto. But even if it is, Steve, even if that's all it is, that is an abuse of office under Texas law, and that's why he's subject to these indictments. And
very quickly, we have the brief statement from them tonight. Do you expect we'll be hearing from Governor Perry soon, himself?
I think he's going to stay quiet on this. I think it would be bad for him to step forward And as everybody knows in politics, when you're explaining, you're losing. He's not going to do that.
All right. Well, geez, all year we've been talking about indictments, governors, Republicans, 2016. Everybody talks about Chris Christie. Rick Perry ends up being the indicted governor, at least for right now. Thank you, James Moore, for joining us. Appreciate that.